Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to today's live broadcast going out on Facebook and YouTube as we speak. Just to let you know, we've put the raw file that I'm going to edit shortly in the comments. So if you want to have a try yourself later, you can download that and just give it a go as well. So let us know where you're watching from as well in the comments. That would be great as well. And at some point today, we're going to put up a poll in the broadcast, just asking you what you'd like to see on next Friday's broadcast. So that's next week, not this Friday as it's Easter. So next week as well. So that poll will pop up on Facebook only. You won't see it on YouTube, but in YouTube, you're welcome to write your answer as well. So let us begin. So this is what we're going to look at today. So above me, so right here, that's just a little edit I did this morning. And then over on the left is the original file. So we're going to quickly run through and see what I did. So there's a few layers going on, a radial mask, some additional stuff for the building, and some extra clarity going on as well. So let's get rid of this one and start with the original. By the way, on the file that you download, you'll notice if I just bring back at the browser, it's got EIP as the extension. So that means when you bring it into Capture One, you'll actually see these three sort of different edits. So this is the edit that Alex did, who my colleague, whose photo it is. We've got the straight out of camera, no adjustments, and then we've got the one I did this morning. So you've got a few different things to look at as well. So it's from a Sony camera, but EIP is just the phase one package format. All right, let's have a look at what we can do with this shot. And if you have any questions as well, chuck them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer some of them as well. All right. Okay, so first of all, before I get to anything else, let's just hide the browser. What I want to do is just straighten up the building a little bit. And by far the easiest way to do that is to use the perspective tool or the keystone tool up the top here. Now this gives us a couple of lines which we can use to identify our error. Now this funky building in the middle, this is the one I'm sort of most interested in, the one that I want to be straight. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Now you can, if you want to, zoom in a little bit just to help you align. So I'm going to put this one at the bottom, and then this one, as it's an interesting bit of architecture, we're going to go for that point here. And then this one, we're going to go over there and then find this guy and drop that where we can see the last bit of the building, which is around there. Okay, so let's zoom back out. Now, generally what you want to do is, now in this case it's tricky because our building's sort of in the middle, but for best accuracy, if you can find the error as far to the edge of the photo as possible, that would help. So if there's something over on, you know, this side, then that would be better. But this is the one that we want to correct properly. So let's hit apply in the center, and then that will straighten up that quite nicely. Now, if we need to fix the crop, let's grab the crop tool and let's just open this up a little bit as well. Now, by default, Capture One will fix to 80%. So you can see in the keystone tool the calculations that were made by putting those lines on. So the lines on the keystone cursor tool, they just help Capture One calculate what it should be. Now, if you want to adjust that, you can play with the sliders, but that looks pretty good to me. The only thing I will say is that by default, the amount is 80. So that means we fix the converging verticals, the falling down building syndrome, to 80%. Now at 100%, we can change that. So let's punch in 100, and then you can see it corrects it that bit more. But sometimes it can start to look a bit overcorrected, because by default, when we stand at street level and look up, then we do expect the buildings to converge a bit. So generally around the 80% mark is about right. But if you're wondering why it's not fully corrected, that's exactly why. Okay, so let's just hide my crop lines and we go for that. All right, so correction wise, I'm guessing this is a sunrise or a sunset, so 6:38. So we don't want to make it look like daytime, but it's just a little bit on the muddy and dark side. So I'm going to lift up the exposure a bit, but not too much, and also the brightness a little bit. And then I'm going to hit auto on my levels. So that will just make sure the shadow point and the highlight point is set correctly. Now, in hindsight, I might feel that the brightness is just a bit too much, so let's go for that. So I'm happy with the overall sort of exposure look. Now, high dynamic range wise, I'm pretty sure we don't actually need to touch those right now because we're not losing any shadows, we're not losing any highlights. You know, my bright areas are pretty good. There's nothing kind of nasty bright stuff going on in the windows. Over here it looks pretty good, so I don't really feel the need to touch those. And if we bring whites down, see, it's not really having a great effect. Highlights not having a great effect either because everything is kind of sitting in the right place. We could lift up the shadows a bit, but then it looks kind of boring and flat. So let's not do that. So what I will add, again, because it's a little bit on the slightly misty side, is to add a bit of clarity because that will just sharpen it up quite nicely. Now the only thing you can see happening is that if we push it too hard, we're getting a halo around the sun here, which doesn't look too nice. So I'm going to put just a little bit in, and then if I feel I want some more, then we're going to add that in later. So I'm just going to be really careful not to overdo that. Or actually what we might do, let's do this. Let's make a new field layer, and we're going to call this overall clarity, like so. That's probably too many L's, isn't it? So grammar police out there, or that might be the right number of L's, I don't know. Comments please, Facebook and YouTube. So I'm going to bump the clarity up to where I think it's good, and then what I'll do is if I press M on the keyboard, you can see that's my mask, so that's adding clarity to the whole shot. Now as it's got this adding a kind of a strange halo thing to the sun, which is a bit distracting, what we can do is we're just going to cut a little hole out of the mask. So if I grab my erase brush over here, make sure it's set to 100% on flow and opacity, I'll make it a bit bigger, and then we just cut out that bit of clarity there. There we go. So that's got the nice clarity over the rest of it, but it hasn't messed up the shot there. And you can see that's what I've got for the mask now. Now it doesn't have to be super accurate because clarity is not going to make any difference to the sky there. So just cutting out that little corner means it will work quite nicely. Great. So moving on, let's have a look up close to the building. Now it's almost sharp. It's a 20th of a second. So Alex has got a good stealthy grip there. What we can add is a tiny bit of structure, because structure will just help the kind of edge definition on the buildings. So you see, if I go to 100, like so, then that's too much, but you can see the effect that it's doing. So if I just bump it up until it's about good, like so. So I'm happy with that. Now I want to focus in on the building a little bit. So we could do our traditional old vignette, but the issue with the vignette, of course, is that the vignette slider, it only has one shape, or it has actually more than that, but it has the elliptical shape or a circular shape, but we don't have any control over the fall off or anything like that, and it's kind of darkening the top of the building, which I don't want. I kind of wanted to shove it up a bit. So let's make a new layer, and we're going to call that radial, like so. Radial, get that right. And oh, Alexa, shush. She always interrupts me. Alexa, turn on Do Not Disturb. That should fix it. Thank you. Okay, where were we? So let's draw a radial, and let's put that somewhere kind of around there. As I said, I want it kind of towards the top of the picture, and I want it more feathered than this. So for this reason, we're going to pull that out a little bit more and then squeeze those in slightly, like so. Okay, so I'm going to try that. Now to make my sort of darkened areas, we can try a few different things. Now, as I've said in webinars and other live broadcasts, I don't tend to like doing exposure because it drops everything by the same amount, and the shadows like down here can get a little bit sort of heavy-handed. So we can try a couple of things. We can go for brightness. That's going to be a bit softer. So I think I prefer that. And there's nothing to stop you mixing adjustments in the radial. So if you felt now all of a sudden it was getting a bit too dark down here, then what we could do is on that same radial adjustment is pull up the blacks a little bit like so. So I've still got darkening of my skies, which is nice and subtle, but by lifting up the blacks a little bit, it's not too harsh. Now, what was I going to do? Okay, bringing the radial cursor tool back on over here. If I want to retrospectively edit it, I can feather it a bit more, move it around, and so on. I think I'm happy with that. So if I turn the radial off and back on, you can see the effect. Now, one last couple of things. There's the sun, I guess, just bouncing off the side of the building there, just where my cursor is. And I want to enhance that a bit more. So I want to brighten it a little bit. And also probably this building, just brighten it a bit too. So again, I don't know what adjustment will work best with that. I saw Richard just ask on Facebook, what does brightness actually do? Brightness brightens things, clues in the name, but what isn't in the name is which parts of the photo it brightens. So it's the midtones, whereas exposure will brighten everything. Brightness, just the midtones. So maybe brightness would be good, maybe a curve would be nice, I don't know. So I'm going to make a new filled layer, which is over the whole shot. And then all I'm going to do is look at this part of the building. So that's the only bit I'm interested in. And then what we're going to do is we can experiment with a few different adjustments. So brightness could work. If we go to the curve tool, and if I hover the mouse around here, you see the little orange line that dances around the curves. That's roughly the tonal range that we want to pick. Now I'm going to go for a luma curve because all that's going to do is change luminance, but the color is going to be stable because I quite like the color on the side here. So if I pull this point up, you can see where it's affecting. So I'm going to do something like that. So that's just giving a little bit of a brightness bump to this area and actually on this area as well, like so. Now what I could do, as I said, is combine adjustments a bit more as well. So this building is a little bit on the muddy side. So if we add in some clarity, that'll just make it pop a bit more. Now that's over the whole shot. So we're going to call this extra clarity and what did we do? And luma. And it's just for the buildings. Very long layer name there, but helpful for you guys. So, but now that's over the whole shot. So we don't want that because it's giving me my halo around there. It's brightening everything else out. But we want to just isolate it to these areas. So what I could do is, like we did with the other shot, I could just start erasing all those areas that I don't want it to be. But I think that would take me longer and we want to work faster and smarter. So let's not do that. We're just going to say, let's get rid of this mask and then paint it in where we would like. Helps if you choose it, David. There we go. And grab my brush and then paint it back in where I want to have it. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on. So let's go around here. I'm going to make my brush a bit smaller and softer, so it's nice and subtle. And we're going to turn this guy right down, which is going to slow down the rate, the flow rate of how quickly that adjustment builds up. Because the left-hand building might need more or less than the right-hand building. So we can use one layer for two different jobs, depending on the final opacity of the mask. So you'll see better in a second once we start doing it. So I'm going to probably make that even a bit smaller. And we're just going to brighten up this area like so. Let's hide the mask. And so on. Maybe a little bit up here. Note I'm not being super accurate about it. And then on this one, let's make the brush bigger. And then we can just paint in a little bit more clarity and brightness around there. So let's zoom back out, not in, and see what that's done. And now we can decide whether I've, overcooked it or not. So if we turn this off and back on, you can just see it's brightened up that area just a little tiny bit. Now to see what flow did, if we turn on the grayscale mask, you can see my funny little mask there. So the brightest areas, that's where the adjustments of the luma curve and the extra clarity, that's where they're having the most effect. So the grey areas, that's where the effect is reduced. So that one layer is kind of having two different jobs really, because we can vary its effect depending where we want to place it. So that's the grayscale mask. Note the shortcut, because then you can just tap M on your keyboard to look at a normal mask, Option M to see the grey mask, like so. So I think now we can go back down our layers and we can see, okay, overall clarity did that. That's great. The radial mask did that. If it's too strong, we could dial back the opacity a bit, but I think it's about right. And then we had our extra clarity on the building, for example, like so. Now overall, kind of stepping back a little bit, I might just be tempted to go ever so slightly brighter. But I bet you it looks probably very different to the edit which we did yesterday or this morning. So that was this morning's, this was right now. See, this morning's much, much brighter. Oh no, that's the, I don't know what that one is. So obviously a very different one. So this was the one that I went for now. But it's very difficult to match edits day to day. But on the EIP, you can see that and play around. Okay, let's have a look at some questions. Let's see. Oh, good timely question from Daniel, actually. Says, love the EIP, especially when working with external retouchers, but can you open the EIP in Capture One with Photoshop or Infinity? So the EIP, it's a Capture One format only. So it's the raw file with your Capture One edits. So if you want to pass it to a retoucher or a friend or a colleague or whatever, so you can see what they've done, then it works quite nicely for that. So good, timely question. Thanks, Daniel. Let's have a look. Sharon says, I'm using that technique you taught us with the clear mask and painting it in you showed right now. Great. Brilliant. It helps a lot. I think so. It's a bit of a contentious subject on comments, because the obvious thing to do is to kind of mask where you think you want it and then add the adjustment. But I just personally don't think it's as flexible for that reason, in that one layer can vary its effect over the shot. But you should do what you feel makes sense. Okay, checking other questions. Let's have a look. Oh, Russell was asking, I saw that earlier. The output levels are set to 4 and 255. You might have missed it, Russell, if you didn't catch the beginning, but that was just based on the auto adjustment. So if I tap that, then it tucks them in like so. Now, since I've done some editing, the histogram's moved a little bit, so it now feels these are the best adjustments. But by default, Capture One will give you a bit of leeway. If we look at exposure, so you've got the clipping thresholds. That what this means down here. That means, do you want to clip or not clip at all, or heavily clip? So for example, if we made this 1%, which is going to make a big difference, and we said auto, you see it's cut into the histogram more, like so. So you can decide exactly what how your auto behavior should work. So that's why it was set to those values. Now, obviously, if the histogram ended around here, then auto would bunch it in this direction. But there's a little bit of information there, so Capture One by default won't clip into it. Okay, let's have a look. So I have my fantastic colleague Christine in the background helping me out with questions and all kinds of other stuff. Let's have a look. Can we move the EIP to move images between sessions? Richard was asking. Yes, that works really nicely. So the EIP is just completely transportable. So if you want to move an image to another session, you can actually right click on the thumbnail in a session. This is a catalog, so you won't see it, but you'll see an option at the top here that says pack as EIP, and then it will just pack up that file as EIP straight away. So just have a look for that up the top. Okay, last couple of questions. Let's see. Oh, on the poll, I noticed, I'm just looking at the poll monitor on the other screen. So color grading is winning so far, which is good. So that could be something you see next week if the questions still come in like that, for sure. Let's have a look. Sharon said, I found myself editing for an hour, raising exposure, only to find out my max display is on auto brightness as it was during the day. So it was a bit dark, and from that time I'm editing while bringing the screen brightness to a maximum. Yeah, that's something certainly to be aware of, like on the laptop displays. If brightness is on auto, then just be wary of what's going on with that display. You know, I'm lucky enough to have a nice external monitor that auto calibrates, so I don't have that issue. But there's definitely a variation. So looking in this direction is the full screen monitor. This way I've got the MacBook Pro, and obviously the auto calibrating display is bang on all the time. The MacBook Pro, of course, because if it's adjusting automatically, then you don't quite know where you are all the time. Okay, last two questions, and we've got some more news about offers, and then we can head on your way. Could Capture One have a liquify tool? That's a good question. Or let's take Sharon's question off. Sorry, otherwise it's coming up. Could Capture One have a liquify tool? That's a good question actually, but remember, liquify is pushing the pixels around in quite a distinct way. Yes, I appreciate we're doing that with the Keystone tool, but liquify is one additional, maybe a step that kind of goes outside of a raw converter. That's more of a pixel editing question, but who knows what will happen in the future. Okay, last question. Can we change the angle of inclination of a mask? No, you can move a mask. So let's have a look at my mask here. You can just about see it. If you've got a brush tool selected and you hold down the command key, so you get a little four-way arrow like so. On the PC, I imagine it's the Alt key. Then you can actually move the entire mask, as you can see. So if we look at that, I don't know if that works in grayscale. So if we do the Alt key, so you can move the entire mask around. Now that can be quite handy when you copy paste a mask from one image to another, but it's not quite right. Then sometimes you can get away with moving the mask a little bit as well. Cool. All right. Last thing to mention. Of course, thanks for watching. It's the highlight of my day, chatting to you guys out there. I very much appreciate you spending the time to come in and watch with us as well. So if you don't already have Capture One, we're offering 25% off right now. So you just need to go to our store to find that as well. And please, if you want to share the edits that you're doing yourselves on your own photos, you can use the hashtag #editwithus. And we might even show some of those on our own Instagram channel as well. So it'd be nice to know what you're up to in these weeks when we're all sat and stuck at home. Cool. All right. Many thanks again for joining this live stream. It will go up on YouTube relatively quickly, and it will also go up on Facebook as well. So where you're watching it now, it'll just get recorded and put up there in a few minutes. So if you missed it, or want to watch it again, just rewind and start at the back. All right, we'll see you Wednesday, and we're going to focus on a particular feature on Wednesday, which is color. So probably what I'm going to do is look at this guy, which is the advanced color editor, and all the weird and wonderful things that we can do with this particular tool. So it's often a little bit misunderstood, but it's actually super easy to use. And extremely powerful, with lots of great options for really sort of dialing in the exact color tone you want. So come back Wednesday, same time, and watch that. Great. Many thanks for joining again, and we will see you all shortly. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Take care.